What I want to talk about is the idea of fear, and fear is weird. Let me tell you a story. When I was younger, I had fears just like every kid does. I was scared of the dark, I was scared of the monsters in the closet, scared of sharks at the beach, normal stuff. But there was one fear that I never quite understood, and it sticks out for that reason, and it's a little embarrassing. So, what better time to bring it up than now? Watching the original Willy Wonka, there's a scene when Violet gets turned into a blueberry. I could not tell you why, but this scene terrified me. Ask my mom, she'd tell you I could not get through this part of the movie. I was a mess. No idea why. I'm not particularly scared of blueberries. Fruit doesn't really bother me. I think Gene Wilder was a genius, and what's not to love about a chocolate factory? So, fear is a strange emotion when you really think about it. It's one of those things that people fear, but even when we feel that emotion, we don't always feel it the same way or about the same things. We're probably not even the only organisms that experience fear, but we definitely have a unique relationship with it. But what I want to focus on is the way that fear can be used not only to tear us apart, but when used properly to help build unity. Now, in order to talk about this, let's start off with a definition just so that we're all on the same page. The way I'm referring to fear is that it is a physiological and psychological reaction. It's a response to a stimulus. It's something that's measurable. So whether you're looking at heart rate or brain chemistry, it's something that you could detect. And it's also something that we share a capacity for, but different experiences with. In other words, things that you're afraid of, I may not fear. Things that we both may fear, we might fear to different degrees. So, my first point is this. In order to really understand the way fear can be used and the role it plays in our society, we need to take a historical look at it. And I mean long term. So, from an evolutionary perspective, fear lives in the part of the brain called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is below the cerebrum. It's part of the ancient brain. And we'll find homologous structures in things like amphibians and reptiles. Our species is about 200,000 years old. You talk about amphibians and reptiles, they have ancestors 400 million years old. So this anatomy of the brain, the capacity for emotion, this is nothing new. It's been around for a while. And when you talk about these ideas, when something's been around that long, and when something's as widespread as emotion and fear in particular, it's probably got some kind of benefit. And when we've looked into it, we think we probably found a few of them. For example, fear is instrumental in the fight or flight response, meaning it can help organisms fight off predators or evade them and live to fight another day. It's also really useful for learning. An organism experiencing terror or panic will pick up on patterns of behavior and response much faster than organisms that are not. So it reduces the amount of times you have to experience something to build a connection in your brain. But possibly most significantly, it's related to social constructs. When we look for fear in other organisms, some of the organisms we study are things like cats, dogs, cows, horses, elephants, certain species of birds, and of course, chimpanzees. And what those things all have in common, with the possible exception of cats, is a social structure. They tend to work together. At the very least, we can domesticate them, so they can work with us. Yes, even cats. But the point is, emotions in general, and fear in particular, might have an evolutionary advantage to help organisms getting along and to building unity. Point number 2, humans have a unique relationship with fear. Even though we're not the only organisms that probably feel them, although it's impossible to tell because we've been waiting so long for these other animals to actually answer our questions. I don't know what's taking so long. They're a little shy, but we're probably not the only ones to feel it. We are definitely the only ones that seek it out. And what I mean by that is, if you've ever ridden a roller coaster, gone to a haunted house, watched a scary movie, or waited for a friend or a sibling to turn around so you could scare them, congratulations, you're one of us. Now, the length that fear goes in our society goes beyond just that momentary rush, right, of a roller coaster, of a jump scare in a movie. It's something that we've also used as a motivator, sometimes as a tool, and sometimes as a weapon. And the thought I have when I think about this is, fear is kind of a basic emotion. It's an ancient part of our brain. It's an ancestral vestige. Is it really the best tool we have to get people to do or not do certain things? For example, you'll find fear getting used for things as different as the environmental movement with Silent Spring and Rachel Carson, all the way through Scared Straight programs with law enforcement. Why? Why is it so ubiquitous? Well, it's effective. For better or worse, it's a very strong emotion. And you'll hear this even from the time kids are small. Don't do that. You'll go to HE double hockey sticks. Do this, or you'll never get into a good college. Don't do that, you'll go to jail. So that's the fear getting used to try and get people to do a certain thing. Unfortunately, because fear is so unique and so variable in terms of how different people will feel it, if that's your option, if that's the method you're using to try and get people to do or not do certain things, you're automatically missing big chunks of the population. Like we just said, not everyone's going to feel fear for the same reasons, and even if you do, it could be different magnitudes of fear. If everyone was as scared of bugs as my wife, we would have moved 12 times, and I kind of like our house. If everyone was as scared of missing a flight as I am, we would spend most of our vacation days stuck in airports instead of actually going places. So, there's got to be something better. And this leads me to my last point. Fear needs to be a part of the puzzle. It cannot be the complete picture. Fear is a strong emotion. It's something that we probably couldn't suppress even if we wanted to. I would suggest the idea that fear is an involuntary reflex. It's not something we can choose to feel or not feel, but that doesn't mean that we have to let it drive our reactions. If we want to start changing the way that people think and act and speak to each other, we can go beyond fear, and we should. Now, I'm not saying that you should avoid fear. I'm not saying you should try to spend your life not experiencing fear. What I'm saying is, instead of using the amygdala, instead of using the ancient part of your brain, use the rest of it. Use the social skills we've learned. Use society in general. If you start to feel fear creeping into your life, if you have that moment where your heart rate is starting to increase, your pulse is starting to beat a little faster, take a breath. Pause yourself. Ask yourself these questions. What am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of this object or this person or this event? Is this actually going to happen? And if it does actually happen, what's the long-term consequence for my life? Once you've done that, you can now take a step back and make a value-driven, logical assessment. You can make a decision using the rest of your brain and disengaging that knee-jerk fear response. Because that's the thing, that sudden impulse, that's when you say something that you can't unsay, or when you do something that you can't undo. And so often fear in society nowadays is pitting people against other people. And that's when you see the ugliest, darkest sides of humanity. That's when you get to racism, homophobia, when you get to sexism, you get to political vitriol. That's when those things come out, when fear drives the conversation. To wrap up, fear is weird. The theme of the event is unity through uncertainty. And not only are these times uncertain, but fear in itself is uncertain. It's something that we have in common. And I feel like the capacity for that emotion should be the main point of the conversation. not the actual stimuli causing it. Because those are the things that bring us together, the ability to feel that emotion. But we also have the ability for so many other things. We have the ability to feel compassion. We have the ability to communicate and to understand one another and to find common ground. And I think that's the thing we need to focus on. Let fear be a part of the conversation. Let it be an icebreaker. But do not let it be the final word. And that's what I think we should do. We should minimize the role fear plays in our society. Let it be a small way to find common ground with each other. Because even if we don't have the same fears, it's something that we can still use to relate to one another. Don't believe me, just give it a shot. Unless you're too scared. Thank you very much.